Hi, I'm Shirley McKinnon, and I am a business and leadership coach. I'm about to go onto the Online Prosperity Show. I'm very excited about that. And let me tell you what you can expect. You will hear some strategies that will get your employees more loyal, highly motivated, and contributing to your business, and how to actually be the kind of powerful leader every employee is looking for. That's what you can expect on this one.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we've got none other than Shirley, the leadership expert, who's out there winning hearts and minds for your team. Now, Shirley, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, thanks, Prosper. All the better for seeing you today.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. Have you noticed we're actually matching? We're like twinsies today.
We are. We're like two peas in a pod.
Fantastic. And for those that are watching right now, thank you so much for tuning into the Online Prosperity Show. And I want to ask you a question. I mean, you know how most business coaches just maybe focus on the business structure or the marketing to create business growth? That's not what Shirley does. All right. She focuses on the transformation of the decision maker, the actual driver of the Ferrari. As it turns out, a lot of business people and leaders out there are driving their Ferrari with their handbrake on. And that's what Shirley is here to help us unravel and help us do and have a business that's profitable and enjoyable. Now, you might be wondering, why Shirley? Why now? Why her? Well, I want you to imagine having to step into a role where the team is in disarray, conflicts arrive, and guidance is scarce. And that looks like a team that would have been post-COVID or whatever it is in and around Australia somewhere. But we're going to hear where that team was and how Shirley actually made sense of the situation there. All right. And not only did she survive through that chaos that was happening within that team, she actually thrived, turning that dysfunction into harmony. And now she has set that into a remarkable career of her own. Shirley has been a leadership coach for over 25 years across diverse industries, and she's renowned for her ability to elevate business owners and also foster teams that drive substantial growth and create exceptional workplace cultures. Now, we are creating businesses or going to work, and we want those environments to be amicable. And that's exactly what our guest does. So whether you're a business owner that's seeking to inspire your team or a leader that's aiming to enhance your skills, or maybe just somebody who's intrigued by stories of personal and professional transformation, this episode promises to resonate deeply. I met Shirley along the internet corridors, and I resonated with one of her posts where she was talking about a leader who couldn't let go of the leadership that he was doing, or letting his team actually do most of the work. And that's when I reached out to Shirley. I was like, hey, Shirley, let's talk more about this. And now she's here to spill the beans on how to win hearts and the minds of your team. Now, Shirley, I could go on and talk about things that I'm not even qualified to talk about. Tell us a little bit about your journey and what it's been like for you in the 25 years of experience that you now have.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, let me tell you how my journey started. As you mentioned, a very dysfunctional team. So my first challenge as a new manager was I was on a newspaper and I was expected to grow the classified section. And I discovered I had a very dysfunctional team. None of the team was speaking to each other. They were both all sitting at the same table, and one would lean to the person next to her to tell this person something across the desk from her because they weren't speaking to each other. The company said I had to grow the classifieds, but I was not allowed to train these ladies, these phone ladies, in sales because their union said they were in the printers union, therefore I was not allowed to train them in sales. And the sales team would not get commission for selling into the classified pages. And my job was to grow the classifieds. So I had no idea how to handle this. I was the first woman in management. I thought maybe they had promoted me incorrectly because I didn't know what to do. I had no role models because all the managers were aiming to join the 25-year club, which meant that after 25 years, they got taken out to dinner once a month. And none of them were actually interested in managing their people better. And I had no idea. And I tried to think of some ways to get this team together. And in the end, what I did is I paid them overtime. I brought them into the boardroom. I used that great training tool of a cask of wine. And I gave them a problem that was an industry problem, not just ours, but right across the whole country, and gave it to them. And they just looked at me and I said, I want us to brainstorm ideas. And they looked at me and they said, you mean say you don't know how to fix this? And I went, no, do you? And they said, yep. And I said, well, then why haven't you said something? They said, because no one has ever asked us. And so they gave me the solution to that problem. And I was so gobsmacked. I didn't know what to say. So all I did was I gave them another problem. So they started brainstorming on this new problem. And in the process, they forgot they weren't speaking to each other. They forgot that they weren't getting on together, and they were brainstorming and coming up with ideas and making suggestions. And when it came to 6 o'clock, I said to them, okay, this has been a brilliant session. Let's close it down. At 6:15, I tried again to stop them, and they were full on so enthusiasm and so excited about solving these problems. At 6:30, I just kicked them out. The next morning, I had quite a few of them coming into my office with ideas that they had had overnight and suggestions they had to make. And that was the first time I realized that the ultimate employee experience is to feel like they are contributing, that they can think through some of the problems because they are the people who deal with the customer. They're the ones that know the customer the best. And so from there, we went on to quite a range of other strategies, all the time tapping into their different perspective, tapping into their common knowledge, and allowing them to drive the problem-solving process. And I have been teaching this to my clients ever since, and we have had some extraordinary results. Now, many business owners don't think that they can leave problem solving in their team's hand because they think if they step back, everything's going to stop, mistakes will be made. And the one thing I hear the most is, I haven't got anybody to delegate to. If you've got a team, you have got someone you can delegate to that you train up. If you go to someone in your team and you say they're a good, responsible person, say to them, would you like to step up? Would you like me to train you to step into a role with more responsibility? I've never heard an employee say no. They've gone yes, and they've lit up, and they've been excited, and they want to learn, and they want to contribute. And all this is sitting within a team in every business, if only the owners and managers knew how to step into that leadership role.
Wow. Oh, wow. And thank you so much for taking us through that chaotic, classified section of the business.
Yeah.
Now, where were you coming from, for you to step into this role? Were you already working within the business, or were you a new hire yourself?
I had been a sales rep in the business. I was selling advertising and creating the ads. So I was getting copywriting experience. And out of the blue, they offered me the role as classified advertising manager. Someone asked me what would I be doing? And I said, can you ask me in 2 weeks' time? Because I've got no idea. But the great thing was my office was next to the counter, and I could hear the general public coming in and they were saying things. I would go up to the phone room and I would hear what people were saying when they were phoning in. And that information was able to guide me to make certain decisions. But it was treating them as valuable people. Anita Roddick said something I thought was groundbreaking. She said, we recruited for employees and people turned up instead. And I think we've got to stop using the language of employees or because that pushes them away. It makes them impersonal. If you think, I sit with my clients sometime and say, if a friend of yours, like one of their team, his wife went to hospital. And I said to him, if a friend of yours, his wife went to hospital, what would you do? He said, I would send her flowers. And I went, okay. So he quickly told his PA to send some flowers to the wife of one of his staff. He not only got a visit from the husband thanking him, he got a visit from the woman's mother to thank him for having such a wonderful place for her son-in-law to work at. Wow. And once you start thinking about the next thing he did, one of his staff lost his license. He bought him a little scooter, the little electric scooter, to be able to get to work and back so he didn't lose his income because he'd lost his license. There are so many strategies that make them feel valued and included. There are so many strategies, that you can do with your team where they appreciate you're noticing them and they appreciate and value. It ends up what I call a sticky culture. Now, a sticky culture is where no one wants to leave, where people want to stay. And I had a client who, within 1 month, had transformed his business. He'd gone from overwhelmed, from frustrated, from swearing at his staff, and having staff that whenever they had to drive a team to the mines, the mine would offer them big pay and he would lose staff. And in 1 month, he had created a sticky culture to such a degree that when one of his drivers went to the mines, they came back and said, hey, boss, they offered me a job. And he said to them, what did you say? He said, nah, told them I like it where I am. And he did that in 1 month. And within a few months, he'd open up a second branch. And about 6 months later, he's now opened up his third. And his team are growing the business. So that's the ideal.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so many business people, would wish that something like that would happen for them, especially. Now, let's just go back to the part where obviously you being this sales rep and then you then got promoted to be now head of classified and things like that. Now, was that just out of merit, or is this something that happens to a lot of leaders who just get thrown into an environment that they know nothing about? And like you said, there were no mentors and everybody else was just really waiting for their 25 years so they could go some sort of a dinner or something like that.
The wonderful thing to that story was as the team took off and the enthusiasm built and the classifieds grew, our general manager asked all those other managers to come and sit in on my training sessions to see what it was I was doing with my team. But the best thing that can happen to you is not know what you're doing, is not know what your next step is, and therefore having the courage to sit down with the team and say, I don't know what to do with this problem. What do you guys think we should do? I am such a believer in giving a problem to a team and then watching them come up with ideas that management would never have even thought of. We had one client who was about to lose a $3 million client. And I worked with the managing director and we presented it to the whole company. And we said, we are about to lose this client. I want every department to sit down, have a meeting and brainstorm ideas of how can we look after this client better. Don't look at what we've done traditionally. Just look and see how can we look after them better. We were astounded by what happened. Let me tell you a few of the things. This was a hydraulics company. They had hydraulic motors. So first of all, the maintenance guys, they had a barbecue in the morning, a barbecue breakfast, and then they went into the admin and asked the girls to print them out A4 sheets of paper, laminated, and they went to the site and they put these after hours numbers all around the site, next to their machinery, in the smoko room, everywhere. So if anything broke down, they were the first number that everybody saw. And they scattered that all around the site. Now, the very first thing that happened, these guys had only ever been given a 12-month contract. First thing that happened is that contract was extended to a 3-year contract.
Wow. So that's 9 years now. Guaranteed.
Yeah. The engineers, they decided that they needed to teach the client more about how the motors were adapted for the environment. It was a different motor if it was a dirty environment. So they booked a bus, they filled it with all the engineers off the different sites, and they to show them the different environments, the different motors, and educated them on what was the best motor for the environment. So the engineers, they did that. They almost forgot to tell us they were doing it. The guys in the warehouse, they looked to see what parts this client ordered more often. Now, these parts had to come in from Sweden. So what they did is they ordered in all the parts that these guys usually needed when the engine was being maintained. Their delivery time for parts went from 2 weeks down to 24 hours. So that was something. Every department came up with ideas, and every department mixed. We had someone from every department on the committee, so everyone was communicating and understanding. The end result of that project was 18 months later, this client was worth $38 million to them, and other clients were asking how they could get onto the same program. There's nothing so sweet as a team in flow coming up with ideas for the business.
So I'm from Zimbabwe and in Africa, where we've got a statement: if you want to go far, you go alone. But if you want to go further, you go together. Yes. And this is exactly this in personified, where people are actually coming together and everyone is playing their part. Yes. Even the ladies in the front who were just printing out the papers and laminating them, they were making sure that 3 million was going to be maintained and kept within the business. And looking at your track record, Shirley, most of the things that you've been doing have been very unconventional. Like when you took over the classifieds, you were literally paying people overtime. And there's a rumor that you actually brought in a cask of wine. I'm not going to tell the people that's what you did, but you had to do what you had to do at that particular time. Now, is this things that you would have learned in like leadership school, or has this got something to do with your background or the kind of person that you are?
I think it's definitely not learned. I had no qualifications. I had not done any business courses. I had not done any management courses. I did do some management courses through my career and learned theory. But I think it's about, when I was a sales rep, I always got given the most difficult people to look after because I was always fascinated by their thinking and how had they got to where they were. They were angry and upset. And I was always curious as to what had happened to get them there. And so I guess I was perceived as a good listener. And so I would watch people and I could see their body language, and you acknowledge it, and you talk heart to heart. Honestly, no games, no masks. It's a heart-to-heart conversation. And when you do that with groups of people who are working together, when I teach my clients how to do this, when you stand in front of a team and say, I don't know how to do this, but I'm willing to believe that together we can discover how to do it, that vulnerability is seen as being authentic. And authenticity is what most people are wanting from their leaders these days, just being real and treating them as people. That's what is wanted.
I like the statement. Yeah. You did mention a statement that, we put a classified for employees, but people turned up. At the end of the day, it is people that we're dealing with, and it is people that will move the business further and obviously help us do and have that profitable, bottom line that we're always in search of. So you now have explained a little bit about, you were learning based on the people you were around, but also now that you've been given this role, some people would seek out to have a mentor or somebody they can look up to, but you didn't even have any of that. And worst of all, you were the first woman that was awarded this role in and of itself. First of all, just how did you feel about that? Because I just need to understand the person that was now stepping into this chaos. And
Well, let me tell you how the management meetings went. When I first joined the management team, it was like I was invisible until they had something that they wanted to discuss about the cafeteria. When they said the printers, their clothing was covered with ink, and they were coming in and leaving ink on the chairs, every manager in the room turned and looked at me because they assumed as a woman I would know a solution for something to do with a kitchen or with a canteen. And that was the first time I was included in there was when it was that. And I came across a lot of resistance about having a woman. And I've had some appalling bosses, which just teaches you what it feels like to be at the impact of someone who doesn't try to understand you and doesn't treat you as a person with something valuable to contribute. All the fear that's out there at the moment with AI, businesses shouldn't fear this. Business owners should learn about AI, but they have a business full of people, actual people that can talk to their customers, that can delight their customers, rather than the customers having to deal with a bot. So yes, AI is incredibly valuable for a range of things, but if you're wanting to get loyalty from your customers, let your people interact with your customers and train them and train them. So, the more you train them, the more valuable they become, and the more information you get from them. So,
now you would find some business owners thinking, "Oh, I could just train them and they might leave tomorrow," and things of that nature. What do you say to a mentality like that?
I say, I know there's a concern if what I spend time and effort into someone and train them and they leave. My question is, what if you don't train them and they stay?
Ooh. Okay.
Look what you're missing out on. And look what when you train someone and they become more valuable to the business, they get more confidence. They will contribute more. It's a cycle, and it's a positive cycle if the manager or owner has learned how to step up into leadership shoes. I have many clients when I start working with them say, don't talk to me about leadership stuff. I'm not interested in becoming a good leader. I just want my team to pull together better. And I go, guess what? What gets that team to pull together better are people that have learned good leadership skills. And learning those leadership skills does not just stay within the business. It spills over into your family, with your wife, your spouse, with the community. The skills you learn to become a great leader are skills that you will use every day with people in all areas. And believe me, your children and teenagers would really appreciate great leadership skills, because often as teenagers, they're judged and criticized. Well, guess how much cooperation you're going to get from them if that's how it feels to them.
Yeah, but have you seen the teenagers of today? They just want to stay on their phones. They just want to play games and maybe go back home and keep looking at some sort of a screen. Like, if people are to maybe employ teenagers, how would you get them to collaborate, like you keep saying?
I would. Now, let's go slightly down a different path. Everybody has their own values. Okay, I have a series of 10 questions. It's from Dr. John DeMartini, to identify your values and passion. So once you know someone's values, then you know how to get the best out of them. Now, someone who's on their phone all the time, that is their form of communication. That is their form of communication. If they're playing games, often that's what they do in between things. I always remember seeing a grandfather who was sitting on his iPad playing solitaire, growling at his grandson for sitting on his phone playing games. How does that work? So if you took a young, I have clients sometimes that everything works really well, and they'll say to me, would you work with my son or would you work with my wife? Because I think there's some things some concepts you have would be really useful to them. One of my clients said, I'm really worried about my son. He's highly intelligent, but he's on his phone all the time. He's on his phone all the time. And he's really smart, but I'm worried he's not going to be able to pass his exams. So I had a one-on-one with his client, with his son, and said to him, what's the most important thing for you at the moment? And he said, girls. Right. Okay, girls. So is that what you're doing when you're on the phone? You're scrolling in the hope that you'll find a girl. And he goes, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So I said, look, I've got another idea for you. What if you were to offer to teach some of the subjects you're so good at to the girls at school to help them pass their exams?
Ooh, flipping
and he went, Do you think they would want that? I said, if they're struggling, say with maths or with IT, they would love that. They would want to learn from you. You could teach them that. And I thought that in the process of doing that, it would keep him up to speed with his own schoolwork as well. So he started coaching some of the girls at school, ended up having a couple of great girlfriends, kept up with his schoolwork, and his father breathed a sigh of relief because he was right into his schoolwork and kept up with his schoolwork. So what you do is you go in and you find what's important to people. And then that is what you use to actually help them step up. Don't sit back and judge that what they think is important is not good enough and try and put your values on them. You have to be genuinely interested in what they're interested in. Let me give you a teenage example, okay? Let me give you a teenage example. We had a coffee shop. We ended up buying a coffee shop by accident. We took it over on April Fool's Day, which we thought was entirely appropriate because we had no idea how to do it. And we had...
Right?
Yeah. We had, I think it was 16 under 17-year-olds working for us. And we always tried to set up systems so if they came without their brain to work, everything would still work because the systems were in place. But we had a couple of systems that weren't working. So what I did is I took each person and I sat down and I had a one-on-one with them over a cup of coffee. And I asked them, what is it that you like about working here? Because everyone feels comfortable saying nice things. They are then comfortable telling you what needs to be improved. If you do it the other way around, they say, no, everything's okay. So what do you like about working here? And most of them told me it was because of the team they were in. What would you improve if you could? And what changes would you make if this was your business? Now, I was asking 15, 16-year-olds, what changes would you make if it was your business? I tell you, they came up with the best ideas. And we implemented so many of those ideas and gave them credit, and the team celebrated every time. And of course, every time we implemented one of their ideas, the whole team would make sure it would work. And then I said also, we've got a system at the change of shifts that's not working. That one shift would put all their notes in a diary, the second shift would come and forget to look at the diary, and we just couldn't get that changeover. And these kids said to me, are you kidding me? Went, what? You don't know of a system that would work? And I went, well, do you? They said, put a whiteboard up on the wall and write it on the whiteboard. Duh.
Oh, no. Okay.
And we put the whiteboard up. One shift put their things up with it. The next shift checked the board when they come. It worked beautifully. But sometimes with our knowledge, we complicate things. We can't see the simple things that they can see if they're working in there. So even 15 and 16-year-olds have got something to contribute to your business.
Wow. I mean, so that means a lot of people are leaving so much untapped potential by not tapping into their team members to help them, solve some of these problems. Because, the first time you introduced us to problem solving, that was done by people that were in the classified department. And now you've got these 15-year-olds again to help you with problem solving. But leadership is not just maybe in the workplace. You also are a leader in your own private life, okay?
Absolutely.
Maybe these teenagers are saying and doing these things because they're being paid. How about in the home? You had a daughter of your own as well. How did you deal with that?
I did. I had a daughter who was a very angry young girl, and she had every reason to be. Her parents had got divorced, and her father was a little bit dismissive of her, and she adored him, and that hurt. And when she got hurt, she got angry. And she was, and I have to actually tell you, when she turned and looked me dead in the eye and was rude and aggressive, in my head, I could hear my mum saying, "Don't you let her get away with that. That's disrespectful." But I looked at her and I could see her hurting. So I would just go forward and hug her. And she would fight me to begin with, and then she would hug me back. And she would say things like, "I'm sorry, Mum, I don't know why I do that." If I had followed what my head was saying, what my mother had said, we would have been at odds all the time. And the thing was, she got more and more upset and angry. So I convinced her to go to a counsellor. In fact, I tricked her to go to a counsellor. And the counsellor asked her, did she want me to leave the room or could I stay? And she said, no, Mum could stay. She asked her, out of 1 to 5, 5 being suicidal, where did she feel she was at? And my daughter put herself at 4.
Ooh.
And I watched this counsellor work with her, because we all know the hardest thing in the world is to communicate heart to heart with a teenager. The biggest concrete wall to put in front of a parent is whatever. And I watched this counsellor ask a question and get total honesty and build empathy. And I'm sitting there thinking, right, so now she's going to ask this next question. And she never did. I was never able to guess what the next question was, because she was asking questions following on from what my daughter was thinking. I was asking questions in my own mind to try and get her to a spot. And that was the first time I saw the difference between the two ways of asking questions. Business owners and managers will get into trouble if they go and talk to a team member as if they're trying to solve a problem. What happened? When did it happen? What do you think has caused it? Those all closed-ended questions. And it shuts the other person down and it excludes them. If you go in and ask open-ended questions, tell me what happened, you will get a flood of information. The person will add suggestions. They will feel as if you're listening to them, and it builds empathy. Those two forms of questions, asking questions, will make or break relationships. You know, I make my business owners go home and practice their open-ended questions on their wives and their children. And I had one that came and said to me, because what we do is we go to work all day, we come home, we don't even look at each other. How was your day? Yep, good. How was your day? Yep, good. And then spend the night watching TV. That's not how you grow relationships. So I train my clients to go home, look at their wife and say, tell me about your day. And one wife, he came back and told me in the next session, she looked at him and she said, you've never said that before. Why are you asking me that? And he said, because it's my homework from Shirley McKinnon. And she went, oh, okay. And it still worked. She told him all about her day, and she really felt like he was listening. She felt listened to. Do you know what that does for a relationship when the other person feels listened to? When you do that in a business, when someone comes into the room and you stop working on your computer and you face them and you ask an open-ended question, you will make people so loyal to you. You end up creating a sticky culture.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you so much for that. And I think you highlighting this, because there's a whole difference when a business owner or a dad or anyone just needs answers. They are going to be asking in line to that, and the other person feels confronted, and obviously that wouldn't work. Now, you have obviously showcased to us that you are the real deal and you really know how to handle all of this leadership, both in person and in business. How is it that you're helping people now transform maybe their performance, and what sort of services are you offering if they show up to your consultancy?
Well, nothing different from what I've been doing pre-COVID for quite a few years, but I have a leadership blueprint program that I take people through. You know, back in 1998, I created a profile to give someone feedback on what their traits are and how it impacts other people. So I work with managers and business owners to become more self-aware of how they impact people and give them strategies to actually make that impact really positive. So I have worked with a lot of, I'm going to say something very generic here, a lot of engineers and people that may not have good people skills. Well, you know what? You don't need to have natural people skills to be seen as a strong and inspiring leader. You just have to have systems which have the same impact. So the three sides of the triangle in my leadership blueprint, the base of the triangle is working with the owner, doing the profile, assessing them, getting them to understand, getting out of their heads what their vision or their three standards are, because a lot of my clients don't go in for a vision, but they do have three standards in their heads they'd like everyone to work towards, and teaching them how to share it with the team. The second arm of that program is the team itself, working with the team, getting them to take ownership, getting them to step up, elevating some people, then looking at gaps and looking at systems that are lacking in the business so that the owner can step back. The third arm of this program is dealing with your customers. So learning to communicate with your customers. Do you know most businesses, when they want to grow, they look for new customers? That is the most expensive and the hardest strategy to apply. The best strategy to apply is to go to existing customers, get them to come back more often and upsell them when they do come back in. And so the third one is building real loyalty with those customers so you get a lot of repeat business. And, talking about the questioning, it is so important. I taught these young engineers how to question properly, and a customer came in to make a $50,000 purchase, and the young guy had learnt questioning skills. He then got an add-on to that of another $70,000. So to grow the business, don't look at the marketing. Don't look at your internal marketing to your own team and your internal marketing to your existing customers. This is all covered in my leadership blueprint under my program called Leadership Secrets. Don't tell anybody, but working with people is the biggest leadership secret.
Absolutely. And what would be the best way that people can get started in uncovering these secrets?
They can go onto my website and book a call with me. Let's have a virtual coffee and tell me exactly where you're at and what you're at, because most people may not need all three. I had one client who was already a strong leader, but he still didn't quite know how to get the best out of his team. And so I worked with him with his team. He was in radio, and 2 years later, his team were recognised by their peers for being the best team in radio in Australia for 2 years of overachievement. And he said, isn't that funny? That's exactly the length of time that you've worked with us. So some of them need the base because they're not the self-aware. They haven't yet stepped up to that next level. Some of them need also with the teams, and some of them also need with the customers. So we tailor it to suit every person that comes along to get the best and the fastest results. We don't want to wait 6 months. I want to see this culture forming and changed and transformed within weeks.
With what you're saying, especially the self-awareness part and not having changed anything in terms of hiring new people or bringing in new customers, you're asking people to work with what they already have.
Absolutely.
Literally, you're just giving people back to themselves. They have been searching for all these new things, new team members, new clients, yet they had all along all that they had been looking for.
It's all there. They just need to learn how to tap into it. Going back to that little coffee shop we had when we bought it, it was $400,000 turnover. When we sold it, it was turning over $990,000. This is a coffee shop with 16-year-olds. It turned over $990,000 a year. No marketing, no advertising, all internal strategies.
And this really rings true. I think I saw this on your website from Dan Kennedy, that no business can outgrow or outperform the owners or the leader's mind. And wherever you are, there you are. Unless you have somebody like Shirley breathe life into whatever it is that you're doing, for you to then be able to see, because fish do not see the water that they swim in up until somebody comes in and then says, hey, can you not see that? And I think what you're doing is remarkable. Now, are there any sort of myths that people just really need to get rid of, especially when it comes to leadership? Because some of them that you've been busting today, are seemingly obvious, like how, people would think, it is what it is. We've always done things like this, or we want to grow our business. Let's just go and find new customers and maybe hire more people and then just add to the problem. Is there anything else that maybe we would have missed out on?
If that business owner looks outside of himself to systems and processes and marketing, then he's just bound for failure, because he's giving himself such a hard road, and it's not going to get him or her where they want to get to. So the start is, I think what a lot of people don't understand about coaching is that coaching, you have someone with no agenda other than your own success. And they will feed back to you what you are doing, which you may be totally unaware of, because the only thing on the table is to help you succeed at what you're wanting to do. So many business owners have never had this experience before, because they are usually judged, or they go to another manager, they can't go to their boss, they can't talk to their wife, and they have someone whose only agenda is to make you feel more confident and to upskill you into becoming the best you can be. My promise to anyone who works with me is they will find out what is possible for themselves and their business.
Absolutely. And, so many people think they can go at it by themselves, but it really doesn't work like that. But you did also, obviously, as we wind up the show, you did bring about AI, in one of the, AI questions that you answered. And I just thought we'll leave that for last. Now, I don't know how you feel about this, Shirley, but having been in Melbourne during the pandemic, we were one of the most locked down cities, where I think 284 days we were, we literally wrote the book on what it is like to be locked down. And I feel like when people started going back to work, a lot of the people whose jobs were deemed non-essential, if you really look closely, this is just my observation. If you really look closely at all the jobs that were deemed non-essential, most of them are now being replaced by AI. Would you think maybe that is somewhat demoralizing those people that, are going to those jobs knowing that maybe one day I might just receive a phone call, and now people are no longer collaborating like you said earlier on?
I think that people are not what they do. They bring humanity to the role. Now, if I'm a copywriter, which I am, if I'm a copywriter, AI can actually rewrite my copy and make it even better. And now they're putting AI agents into business that can write tenders and things for them. But if I'm someone in a role that I am fearful AI is going to replace me, find a way to make the human connection. What is your knowledge of customers? Feed through to your supervisor or manager things you notice about the customers, what they like, what they dislike. You will build value. They will value your input into it. You might end up moving from that role and moving to run the AI in that role. So you want to bring the human side together. Yes, I think that there are some industries now that making films, making videos. I've had AI I did a workshop. We converted that into a script. AI converted it into a full video within 15 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Now, I'm going to go and hire an agency to do a video for me when something I pay $20 a month for can do it for me beautifully in 15 minutes. However, if I have got someone who is dealing with my customers, I want that person to be able to have heart to heart with those customers. And while it might seem to begin with a great idea to have bots dealing with them, believe me, I don't know how many times lately I have actually said, please put me onto a human, because it doesn't take long to work out it's AI. The interaction between business and customer should be human, someone with empathy. And if you can create being human as adding value to the business, then you might move from one role, but you will be very valuable to that business. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but...
Oh, absolutely. I really liked that part, because instead of running away from it, let's, embrace it and now start doing the parts that only humans can do, because you literally cannot download a hug, no matter what it is. Like you mentioned, with your daughter or things like that, and the one-to-ones you had with some of the team members, that only a human being can be able to do. So
absolutely. Absolutely. And when you are interacting, what is supposedly be a customer service person online, and you say something, you share something with them, and they say, I don't understand that. Please tell me which of these answers you would like to give. That is the exact opposite of having someone with empathy dealing with you.
Absolutely. And it also takes away from what you say, that instead of, trying to get new customers, why don't you start really deepening the relationships that you have with the people that you have, because it's cheaper, to keep them than to try and, woo other people that know nothing about you, and you have to start that journey. Now, Shirley.
Absolutely.
You've noticed that we could go on and on, right? And I'm just really, really thankful for the time that we spent today, and everything else that you shared with us. I mean, leadership is a revolving door. It's something that we're now going to have to lead in the midst of AI and different types of
Yes.
generations. And I think, your role is needed more than ever, for you to create those connections between, those generations and man versus machine. Now, Shirley, what can people expect in the future? I mean, from yourself, that you're sort of working on now that you've introduced them to your world, where are you taking us?
Well, I think down a very human pathway. I guess there's another book in the wings as well on leadership. I have my first book was called Team Play, and all about how to get the best out of yourself and your team. But I think the more we progress, we are desperate for good leaders. And statistics show that has now become one of the things that employees are looking for in a business. Is they want a leader, communities want a leader. We know countries want great leaders, and all they are people who are willing to be vulnerable and people who are wanting to get the best out of themselves and their team. And so I guess there'll be more of me sort of explaining to people what leadership is. It's, I think there has been a disconnect between what people think leadership is. They think leadership belongs in the corporate world. And it does belong in the corporate world, but it so much belongs in small to medium business. That's the way you get other business owners look at your business and say, what on earth are they doing? I can't work out, because it gives you the edge, and it's not, they can't copy it. So leadership is absolutely that vital thing that you need in your business to see it really thrive and to have a really fulfilling life.
Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough for the time that we spent on the call today. I mean, from what you're saying, when you work better, your business automatically works better, and the people around you will rally with you in order to create a business that's profitable and enjoyable. And thank you so much for actually leading these thoughts. So many people just think like you said, leadership is just in the corporate world, but you have said and you have shown leadership is, personal, our lives, whoever we are to other human beings, we need to actually showcase our leadership and our empathy, and also the authenticity that makes us human from that. Now, Shirley, I can't thank you enough for the time we spent on the call today.
Thank you so much for having me here. I just really enjoyed it, and I just love getting the word out, and it's been so much fun.
Absolutely. Well, we probably need to do another episode, because obviously, there still is so much that we haven't even touched. I just said hi, and before you know it, we're already saying bye. So thank you so much. So as we wrap up this insightful conversation with Shirley McKinnon, I really encourage you to reflect on the power of leadership and empathy, and also authenticity that Shirley has told us, and also the powerful lessons that you would have learned today, because leadership is not just about guiding others, but also about the personal growth and transformation that comes along with it. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it with an emerging leader out there who might benefit from Shirley's expertise and insights. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show for more inspiring and actionable content. I will put all those links that Shirley was inviting us to in the show notes below. So be sure to check out what she's been up to and how she's helping other people be, do, and have a happier existence out there. And I encourage you to join us on our next episode, where we're going to be exploring ideas to enhance your happiness and well-being while providing you with tools to lead a more fulfilling life. Until then, remember that the journey to prosperity begins with a single step. Take that step today. Bye for now.